Hello students, this is Bharti Pamar, PGT English from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Bhilwara. Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood by Anis Jung. Chapter number 2 from the textbook Flamingo. I would like you to think about a beautiful garden with colorful flowers, the fragrance, the leaves, the wind, the breeze, the whole environment. In the season of spring, you can imagine it, I believe, how beautiful it is. Spring is indeed the most beautiful season of all. In the same manner, childhood happens to be the most beautiful era of our lives. No matter how old we are, no matter how intelligent we become, how wise we are, how stable we are, nothing can surpass the careless attitude of childhood. Nothing can surpass that happiness, the smile, the friends. How can we forget the wonderful school days, learning a lot every day, sharing the lunch, fighting with the friends, and then patching up too? How can we forget the swings and the bats and balls and bicycles and riding them all day, talking to the elders, and always getting what we wished for? How can anyone forget the childhood? It's quite metaphorical. Spring and childhood. Indeed, the most beautiful among their counterparts. The chapter here is entitled as Lost Spring, that is, Lost Childhood. Stories of Stolen Childhood. This is the byline. And it clearly states that how the childhood of some children has been stolen away. And when we say stolen away, someone has stolen it. Something has stolen it. Aren't we responsible? And if we are not, then who is responsible? All this we will come to know through these two accounts mentioned in the chapter written by Anis Jung. Firstly, talking about the theme of the chapter. The chapter analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn the children to a life of exploitation. Children, the main theme of the chapter is grinding poverty and the age-old traditions. That how the poverty is responsible for taking away the childhood of many children. That how poverty keeps the families stuck up in pathetic conditions. But then there are these traditions too, the age-old traditions, which keep the people in a terrible socio-economic condition. And they too don't want to get out of it because they want to follow the traditions, never go beyond the limits. So the chapter talks about that how grinding poverty and the traditions are responsible for the exploitation of the children. It also talks about the plight of street children forced into labor early in life and denied the opportunity of schooling. So undoubtedly, education is the most powerful weapon with the help of which we can eradicate poverty. But the problem is that there are many children who are devoid of schooling which can teach them, which can make them healthy, which can improve their mind, body, and soul. But they are devoid of that. The chapter also talks about the callousness of the society and the political class to the sufferings of the poor. If the children in a society are unable to go to school, unable to gain education, unable to improve their lot, aren't we the adults responsible for that? Aren't those who are rich and powerful and capable enough responsible for that? That is why the chapter talks about that how the political system and the political class never takes any sympathy, never looks out for them, and always ignore them, their situation, their lost childhood. And people suffer, and children lose their childhood because of the apathetic attitude of the political class. And the chapter is there in the syllabus to make the students think how they can help society remove these evils and also help these children go to school. The children, the students, the youngsters of class 12th are in a position when later in their lives they will become responsible citizens. They will take part in formation of a better society, taking decisions and imparting them to, implementing them to. So these youngsters should be made aware that what is the situation of many children around them and how they can be helpful for the downtrodden, for the exploited, for the children who really need their help. Moving forward, there are two stories mentioned in the chapter. The first one is about Sahib, who belongs to a family of rag pickers living in Simapuri. And then we have Mukesh, who lives in Firozabad and who make bangles. So coming to Sahib, he happens to be a rag picker, one who collect rags from the garbage dumps, the recyclable material to be sold at a very low cost and to earn a little living every day. Then we have Mukesh, who makes bangle along with his family. And these two boys are our main characters. Sahib's story is entitled as Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage, and Mukesh's story is entitled as I Want to Drive a Car. The first one, Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage, the story of Sahib. Every day Sahib scrounges for things in the garbage that are gold for him. And things are compared to gold as they earn money to him when sold. So when the author says that Sahib scrounges, that is, searches for gold in the garbage dumps, the narrator is not trying to convey that he is searching for gold, actually gold, the metal. No, he is searching for something invaluable, something wonderful, something that can give him money or happiness or throbbing in his heart. It can be a coin, it can be a toy, it can be a rag also. So anything that makes him happy personally, economically, is being called as gold. Well, the garbage is a place where they get so many things to see which they have never seen. So, may it be a toy or a shoe or a book or a piece of something that they haven't seen, that excites these boys, the young boys, the rag pickers. Because these things are not found in their hutments, their homes where they live. So they come to know a different world with the help of the garbage, and that is why they enjoy the work they do. The things in the garbage are wrapped in wonder and make him blimey. He becomes very happy after looking at those wonderful things, how different they are, how unknown to him, but now he can hold them, though they are broken, faded, not of any use, but for him, all these things were quite valuable. They find their life in garbage and they earn their livelihood from garbage. So, yes, garbage was full of wonders for these children, but also was a means of survival for them too and provided them livelihood. Sahib belongs to a family of rag pickers. They live in Simapuri in the outskirts of Delhi, migrated from Bangladesh in 1971. He left his home situated in Dhaka as it was swept by storms. So Sahib's family, the family of rag pickers, basically they belong to Bangladesh, Dhaka, Bangladesh. And they migrated from those lush, green, beautiful fields of Dhaka to this huge city, a different country, a different city. Why? Because the city could provide a livelihood and earning to them. Nothing else but becoming rag pickers was the only option, but the family reside on that, and that is how all the family members became rag pickers, and ultimately Sahib also became a rag picker. They were left with no money, no property, nothing at all. And when every year the storms came in Bangladesh and took away all their produce, leaving them in utter poverty year after year, that is when the family decided to get shifted to a bigger city. And Sahib has nothing else to do. He has no school in his neighborhood to go. So he doesn't go to school, he learned nothing, he knew nothing. He only knew how to become a rag picker, like many of his friends, as his family. And he also became a rag picker. People like Sahib are a victim of many promises which are not fulfilled, and one such promise was made by the author also. When the author said that she would build one school for them, and he happily accepted to go. He was very fond of school, he was very fond of education, he wanted to learn like many other children, but he could not. So when the author told him that if the author asked that if I open a school, would you like to come? The boy was more than happy. He wanted to go to school. And then after some days, he came running, asking that whether the school was ready or not. And the narrator could not find an answer. And then she felt guilt stricken that how and why she promised something that she could not fulfill. But at that moment, she realized that how the life of Sahib was actually filled with many such promises which are never kept and fulfilled, may it be by the politicians or the government or the administration, the NGOs. So she also made one such promise and she was quite sorry about it too. These people, the rag pickers, they live in impoverished conditions. They live in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water. So as you can see that these people lived in utter poverty. Their residence was completely out of anything that we can imagine it to be. It was pathetic, terrible. People live in such areas, such conditions, and they keep on living there for years and years without getting any kind of improvement, without getting any kind of help from the society. Author is left aghast on hearing the name of Sahib, which is Sahib-e-Alam, which means Lord of the Universe. This is quite important because here comes the irony of Sahib's name, that how his name meant that he was the Lord of the Universe. But on the other hand, when you look at Sahib, he was a young boy in tattered clothes, uneducated, unhealthy, without any kind of hopeful, bright future. So his name and his socio-economic condition were poles apart. That is why the irony. Unaware of the meaning of his name, Sahib and his friends roam around the streets barefoot. They don't even have proper slippers or chappals to wear. And it is said that it is a tradition to walk barefoot or maybe an excuse to explain a never ending state of poverty. So what happens in a country like India that many people they remain barefoot, and when asked that why they do so, they always come up with the point, the excuse that it is a tradition and that is why they don't wear chappals. But it is only a way of hiding the reality, hiding their real economic status, hiding the perpetual state of poverty in which they live. So that is why they come up with this excuse. They want to wear shoes, they here refers to the children, and are even ready to wear shoes that don't match. Some of them have never owned a single pair of shoes in their lifetime. And with this, we come to know that how poor they are. They don't even have chappals. So, no matter how scorching the heat is, whether it is raining, whether it is chilly, it doesn't matter because they don't have chappals, they have to walk barefoot. Well, coming to Simapuri, it is filled with 10,000 of such rack pickers living without identity, without permits. And they have ration cards, all though, but no identity and any permits. So this is quite surprising because the ration cards provide them food and also the right to vote. So this is how the political parties make use of all these people. They do have the right to vote and they don't have an identity. They are non-existent. So whatever happens to the children, anything can happen to the children, but nothing can be done later on because they don't exist. But still they are living here without an identity in a different country, in a different city, far away from their native places. Why are they living here? The narrator was quite surprised. But some women in tattered saris answered that if at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than the fields that gave us no grain. So this is the reason that the people are still ready to live in such pathetic conditions in a big city with no hope and no future at all, no education, no proper food, no identity, but they are still living there. Why? Because every day they are getting food, at least, which was not possible in their hometown. Garbage gives them a hope to exist. Sometimes I find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, says Sahib with his eyes lighting up. So you can say that Sahib was quite happy working as a rack picker because for him garbage was filled with wonders. Sometimes he would find a coin or a 10 rupee note, and that is when he was motivated to do something else and find more things because that would give him happiness of some sort. Sahib was watching two men playing tennis on a ground. If a watchman allows, he plays there when no one is there. So, like any other child, Sahib was very fond of playing too, but he did not know much about tennis. Sahib wore a pair of shoes discarded by some rich boy, which looked strange on his discolored shirts and shorts. But he never complained. Even after having discarded shoes, he did not complain because rather than remaining barefoot, some discarded shoes were more than better for him. He started working for his tea stall, but before that, one day when author saw that Sahib was carrying a silver canister, it's a steel canister, I'm sorry, and was going to a milk booth, that is when she learned that Sahib started working for a tea stall and he is paid rupees 800 and all his meal. So, financially speaking, this was a better situation for Sahib because he was earning good money and his meals were fixed too. And he started working in a tea stall, becoming a partner in survival with his parents, and losing the job of a rack picker, losing his friends, losing the fun he had, losing his happiness too, and his carefree attitude. He started working in a tea stall and became the servant of a master. So, this is what has happened to Sahib. And the steel canister seems to be heavier than the plastic bag which he would carry on his back. This is quite ironic, this is quite metaphorical, that how when he was a rack picker he used to enjoy his days with his friends, but when he became a servant, a child labor, he could not enjoy anymore. Though he financially was in a better position, but his remaining childhood, whichever was remaining as a rag picker, was also gone, and he became a worker, a labor. He is no longer his own master. With this particular statement, the account comes to a closure, and it's quite hopeless. It is quite sad also. It brings a sadness over the life of Sahib, who was quite happy in the beginning of the account but lost a lot by the end. But coming to the next part, I want to drive a car, story of Mukesh. The first statement, the switchover, is quite interesting. The narrator mentioned that how the boy wanted to be his own master and how Sahib could not be his own master, but Mukesh dreams to be his own master. He dares to dream. He wants to be a motor mechanic and wants to learn to drive a car. This boy, Mukesh, he lives in Firozabad and his family belongs to the family of bangle makers who had done this job, being involved in this job for centuries and could not think of getting out of it because it was a tradition, an age old tradition. And Mukesh was one of the family members who could not become someone else, who could not work somewhere else. He had to become a bangle maker, but this boy had spark. This boy had dreams. He was confident. He wanted to work. He wanted to work somewhere else. That is why the narrator says that his dream looks like a mirage amidst the dust of streets that fill his town, Firozabad. So let's see whether his dream could turn into a reality or not. Now, coming to Firozabad, it is famous for making bangles, center of India's glass blowing industry, and families have spent years working around furnaces, welding glasses, making bangles. And one such family was of Mukesh's. No one knows that it is illegal for children to work. And if the law is enforced, then all 20,000 children working there can be brought out of those hot furnaces. Well, the problem with the glass bangle making industry is that around 20,000 children are involved in making bangles. They do not go to schools, they do not learn anything, they don't they cannot get out of the industry, they cannot do any other job, but spend their days, their precious childhood days, in hot furnaces, working day after day, week after week, year after year, and suffering a lot. But if the law is enforced properly, then these 20,000 children can be immediately taken out of this terrible industry, unhealthy industry. The problem is that the law is not properly enforced. And these people have to keep working in the glass furnaces with high temperature, dingy cells, no light, no air means no ventilation. So they have to completely concentrate on the fire and the light in a dark room. So you can imagine how their eyes might suffer, how their bodies might suffer. So for adults, it is very difficult. What will happen to the children? How will they grow? Physically, mentally, emotionally. It is their fate, they say. They keep on doing this. Why? Because they say it's a tradition. We were born in this caste. We have to make bangles. We cannot do something else. Born in the caste of bangle makers, they have seen nothing else than bangles everywhere, and they keep on working in the bangle making industry. Well, coming to the dangers of working in the furnaces, the basic problems are two, especially the health related problems. One is losing brightness of the eyes, and the second one, losing eyesight itself. So, as I told earlier, that if you have to concentrate on light or fire in a dark room, where when darkness is all around you and your eyes are completely concentrated on a particular source of light, then gradually your eyesight suffer, your eyes suffer. The same happen with these children. By the time they are middle aged or proper adults, they start having issues with their eyesight, and some of them lose their eyesight completely. Walking down the stinking lanes choked with garbage, past homes that remain crumbling walls, wobbly doors, no windows, crowded with families of humans and animals coexisting, we reached to Mukesh's home. So, if talking about the residential area where Mukesh lived and Seemapuri also, both are similar. Both are devoid of the basic amenities a residence requires. So here also Mukesh lived in a very dirty kind of environment with stinking lanes, and the house itself was a kind of hut with crumbling walls, wobbly doors, and the house was filled with people and animals coexisting like in ancient era, and they were still living like that. That was quite surprising and shocking for the author. And the home, Mukesh's home, was also not very promising. It was a kind of half built shack, has a wobbly iron door, has a firewood stove. So you can see that people were living in God knows which century. The owner of the house was an old man who was a tailor and then a bangle maker. His hard work in life could not educate his two sons. So Mukesh's father, he was working throughout his life, still he could not provide education to his two sons. So not a promising job indeed, but still they were doing it. Bangles symbolize an Indian woman's suhag, auspiciousness in her marriage, and bangles in Indian society, especially in the northern part of the country, happens to be very auspicious, and these people are involved in making these auspicious bangles, but how they are suffering. Having a house to live is a lifetime achievement for them, so working endlessly in making these auspicious bangles could not provide them education, could not provide them proper home. So, but still, if somebody like Mukesh's father could create or have a home for him and his family, that was more than a lifetime achievement. The people in the bangle making industry have not even eaten one full meal in their lifetime. So, what have they reaped actually? Why were they actually working in that industry if they could not eat one full meal properly? That's quite pathetic. Years of mind numbing toil has killed their initiative and ability to dream. To do anything means to dare. See, these people in the bangle making industry, they, even if they try to get out of the situation, try to learn something else, there are many people, rich and powerful, who would not let them get out of that particular industry. And that is how these poor people remain poor. Even if they try to dare, even if they try to rebel, they could not get any success, and this repeated failure make them tired and completely aghast. They don't want to do anything else. They just want to live a simple life, making bangles day after day and living life as it is, without any dream, without any hope, without any courage or confidence to do something else. They form an unorganized sector in running the business of bangle making. They cannot become organized or cooperative because there are many people who are going to harm them in many ways. They live endlessly in a spiral that moves from poverty to apathy to greed and injustice. So their life is actually entrapped in all this poverty and greed and injustice by the society, the powerful people, and they are completely trapped, caught inside this web. Nobody is there who can help them in living their life, they just exist making bangles. All suffer from poverty caused by perpetual borrowing from middlemen that follow no rules in lending money. So, from this, we come to know how poor they are and how captured they are in that web of the middlemen who have no rules in providing money, and they keep on taking the interest and increasing the interest and keeping these people in the perpetual state of poverty, as we say. The world has cheated them at every step. Their efforts to improve their financial, societal, and physical conditions go in vain, and that is how they ultimately lose all their hope and the courage, and they keep on working in the bangle making industry without any happiness. They live in two worlds. As the author saw, there are two distant worlds. One, the world of the poor, and the other one, the world of the rich, the powerful. And how both are so different from each other, distant from each other, poles apart. And how those who are capable enough are not ready to help those who are pathetically downtrodden. In this case, the two worlds are the one, the family caught in the web of poverty, burdened by the stigma of caste. Those who believe that because they were born in this caste of bangle making, they have to become bangle makers in the future, and because of which they remain in this poverty. And then on the other hand, we have the vicious circle of sahukars, middlemen, policemen, lawyers, bureaucrats, and politicians. They are rich and powerful people. They are capable enough. They can do a lot for these poor people, but they would not. On the other hand, these are the people who are responsible to keep these people in this industry, which gives them nothing. Unknowingly, the children accept their life in Firozabad and the burden passed on to them by their parents. So, because it is an age old tradition, the grandfather was a bangle maker, poor man. The father was a bangle maker, again a poor man. And naturally, the child takes after the family and becomes a bangle maker, again a poor fellow, uneducated, unhealthy, with no hope, no future at all. But in spite of these difficulties that drain out the enthusiasm to do something different, Mukesh wants to become a motor mechanic. So, in this world of bangle makers, where there was not a single person who wanted to do something else, who dared to do something else, the narrator was quite happy to see the spark in the eyes of Mukesh, to listen to his words, that how he was ready to do anything to become a motor mechanic, how he was ready to fulfill his dreams. And he also is making efforts for the same by walking miles a day to a garage to learn driving. So, not only was Mukesh filled with dreams, but he was working towards that also. He wanted to work towards that also. Whether he would succeed or not, that is later to be seen, but at least as a child, he had dreams. And that is how the narrator brings the closure to this particular account with the statement, "I want to drive a car," says his daring voice. So, when Sahib's account came to an end, it was quite hopeless. It was saddening also. But with Mukesh and the chapter 2, the author brings hope. The author brings a smile in the end. And it shows that yes, if one dares, if one has the confidence, if one is ready to take on anything, the result can be good. So, with this, we come to the end of the chapter, and the title is completely justified because see, Sahib and Mukesh lost their childhood to the poverty, to the age old customs, to the society, to the rich and powerful. But one of them found happiness by dreaming. However, one lost his freedom too. What kind of world can we provide to to the children of our world is the basic question. So, as a reader, as a student, as a youngster, what do you think? That should the children lose their childhood? Shouldn't you do something about it? What you can do is a lot. Take help, learn a lot, become capable, and then try to change the society. With these words, I would like to close this chapter. Thank you.